Hello and welcome to the Chemistry Open Day, part of the University of Oxford Open Day. And the purpose of this talk is to give you some information about the admissions process in chemistry, to give you some idea about the statistics from the last entry, which was 2019, students due to start in 2020. So we'll start straight away with the stats. So last year we had 771 applications. We've made 230 offers. That's a success rate of about 30%. And we're hoping to get about 190 students out of that. So it's not an impossibly difficult course to get into. The success rate is quite high by Oxford standards. And if the course is the sort of course that you like the sound of, then it's worth having a go if you're going to get the grades, or if you think you are going to get the grades. So I'll come to those later. In the last admissions process, almost 60% of the offers we've made are from the state sector in the UK, 25% from the independent sector. So if you have the view that Oxford is basically full of people from public schools and people who subsequently become members of the cabinet, for example, then that is not right. Our students come from a wide range of different backgrounds, from the UK, from overseas. Particularly, we like students from the EU. Many of our best students have been students from the EU in the past. The only thing that really distinguishes them is their brains, what they can do with their brains, right? They're clever. And that's really the only thing we're looking at. I don't really care what kind of school you go to. What I want to try to find out is what you can do with your brain, how you can apply your brain to solving problems. In the last year, about 60% of our offers are to males and 40% females. That's more unbalanced than usual. It's more often 55-45, but last year it was 60-40, and it does fluctuate a bit. Okay. So what do we want? We want gifted students. We want students who are clever, students who can think about the subject, students who can talk about the subject, students who are committed to the subject, and students who are going to benefit from the tutorial system. So students who are going to engage with us when we're trying to talk about science. And what we're presented with is 700 plus UCAS forms, nearly all of whom are predicted A star, A or better. And we have to try to find the ones who are going to be the best for the course. Now, of course, we will make mistakes in this process. Every year, I'm sure we do make some mistakes, but we do our best to keep the selection process as fair as possible. In 2020, we will not have a test. We've had a test for the last few years, but we decided it wasn't telling us anything we didn't already know, and so we've abolished it for this coming year. So we will be selecting on the basis of your UCAS application form and an interview, and that's all. So let's start talking about the UCAS form. On the UCAS form, really the only thing we're looking for is your academic potential. Right? And that will be measured by your academic record so far, but also by your reference from your teachers and our interview. But the academic potential is really the only thing we're looking for. We don't particularly care if you're a rounded person or anything like that. We particularly do care about whether you can do chemistry, whether you can think about chemistry, and whether you can enter into sensible scientific discussions with us. Of course, your UCAS form contains a personal statement. The personal statement is not that important for most science subjects in Oxford. Now, I have to say that that's not true for all subjects. In medicine, for example, the personal statement is very important. and in some other universities, the personal statement is very important. But it's not so important for us. However, it is possible to ruin your chances in your personal statement. We really want you to be committed to chemistry. This is a chemistry course, it's not anything else, and we want some evidence in your personal statement that you are actually committed to chemistry. So one thing you can say in your personal statement, which will not help your chances, would be to tell us how much you want to go to medical school. In which case I will know that your 4 other UCAS choices are to medical schools and I'm your 5th choice, and that will make you much less competitive compared to all the people who are applying who we know really do want to be chemists. So you must show some commitment to chemistry, and you should say something about your motivation. We'll say more about that in a moment, but it is quite important that you're sensible about that. So if you, for example, were to tell me that your motivation for studying chemistry is watching Breaking Bad, then that might not necessarily be a good thing to tell me, especially since one of my students has been in prison for doing exactly that. What should you put on your personal statement? I think you should try to explain why you want to do this subject. Right? And this subject is chemistry. And if you're applying to us, that's what we want to see. Some evidence, some motivation for why it is that chemistry is the subject you really want to study. Right? The second thing that I think would be a good idea would be, why are you a good candidate? Right? Why should we look at you compared to all the other students who are applying to us? Right? I know almost 1 in 3 students will get an offer, but what makes you stand out from them? Now, you can put also something about your extracurricular activities, and if you're capable of coping with a heavy and deep workload and doing something else at the same time, then that's probably a good sign, because it means that you're well organized and well motivated. But really, that's all I have to say about personal statements. You do need to write it yourself, and most personal statements look very similar to each other. So what are we looking for? We're looking for students who want to be chemists. We're looking for commitment to chemistry. We're looking for evidence of your academic excellence, and that isn't necessarily the exams you've taken so far, although it may well be. Most of our students have done very well in their GCSEs, for example. But we know that some students are late developers, some students may have mitigating circumstances, and it won't rule you out if they're not that brilliant. We're much more interested in what you're like in the 6th form and how you're going to do at A-level. We also want to see some evidence that you can motivate yourself and that you have the discipline to be able to follow a really quite intensive course. If you get invited to an interview, and we do try to interview about 550 to 600 candidates, we will be asking questions, and they will be academic questions. There'll be questions about chemistry. You may get questions about maths, and they're designed to test whether you can think about the subject, not whether you can parrot out the standard A-level answer. So how do you prepare for such an interview? It's obviously a very stressful and worrying situation to be in, and we know that, and we will do our best to put you at your ease and to help you. But the most important thing is to know your syllabus, right? To know what all the subjects that you've studied so far in your chemistry syllabus particularly, and not just to know them, to understand them, right? To understand them probably at a deeper level than the level that you would require to answer A-level questions. Because we will probe things, right? We may well start in the interview with something from your syllabus, which you're familiar with, and then we will try to take it in some direction that is less familiar to you to see if you can follow, to see if you can think your way through stretching your knowledge. So to prepare for that, one way of doing this is to read A-level textbooks from other syllabuses. Other syllabuses cover the same material. Sometimes they cover some slightly different material, but they cover it, they explain things in different ways. And if you start to think critically about how one syllabus or one textbook explains a subject compared to how another one explains a subject, what's good about this explanation, what's good about this one, which one is best, then that gives you more insight into the subject and more understanding of the subject. Now, teachers often don't like it when I say things like that, because, of course, when you're at A-level, you need to be able to give the answers at the level that your examiners are looking for. But from our point of view, we're more interested in whether or not you really have thought about and understood critically the subject. And we don't expect you to know lots of things outside your syllabus. We don't expect you to have read the whole of your syllabus at this stage. We will try to test you to start with on things that you've covered. So another important preparation is to practice. Practice explaining things. Practice explaining science. Practice working things out. We might give you an estimation exercise, for example. Sometimes I might give an example of estimating the mass of air in a room or something like that. If the first time you've tried to talk about science or to explain science to anybody is in an Oxford interview, then you're not well prepared and it's usually painfully obvious. So practice explaining things. Join your science club at school. If you don't have a science club at school where you can talk about science to other fellow students, then try to explain things to your mother at the breakfast table. All the better if your mother isn't a scientist, because if you could then answer her questions, then you'll almost certainly be able to answer mine. So a typical question which I have sometimes asked in the past, which obviously won't be asking next year, is to explain the greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect is, of course, something which is in the standard core syllabus. Everybody has studied it, and there is a set of standard A-level answers to the greenhouse effect. But we will then want to try to probe further, right? So the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere absorbs infrared light, and that's what causes it to heat up. Why does that happen? Why carbon dioxide? Why not nitrogen and oxygen, which the atmosphere is full of? Why aren't we worried about water vapor, which is a very strong greenhouse gas? What kind of radiation actually gets through the atmosphere to the Earth's surface? What happens to it when it's absorbed at the Earth's surface? How does that lead to extra heating of the atmosphere? So a whole range of sort of questions like that, which test how well you actually understand what you've learned. Finally, before you enter the interview, just read through your application again, read through your personal statement. Students often say in their personal statement that they're particularly interested in some particular area, and we might very well start the interview asking you about that. So make sure that you remember what you've written and, most importantly, that it's true. Don't forget that what we're trying to do in the interview is to stretch you, and everybody will get stuck at some point. When you get stuck, we will try to give you hints, right? We're trying to find out whether you're going to be teachable in our tutorial system. When you can't do something, do you just panic, or do you actually stop and think, can you pick up on the hints that we're trying to give you and carry on with the problem further? So don't panic. Think coolly. If you really don't know where to go, ask for a hint, and we'll give you a hint, and we'll try to take you through the problem that we're asking you about. It's really not sensible to try to bluff us. So if you say that you're really interested in some quite obscure area of chemistry, the chances are that one person who's interviewing you will actually know about that area. We will probably even teach it, and we might ask you about it. And then if you don't actually know anything about it, it will become blatantly obvious and rather painful. So don't panic, don't bluff, and don't pretend to know things you don't know, but do try to work things out when you don't know what's going on, because we want to see your brain working. Sounds absolutely awful, doesn't it? But it isn't that bad. And some students come out of the interview really having learnt something. Now, if we give you an offer and you're doing A-levels, the standard offer is 2 A stars and an A. The A stars need to be in science subjects. Chemistry and maths are required subjects. We really like and recommend physics, biology and further maths, not necessarily in that order, but those 3 subjects are recommended. But we are happy to look at students, and we every year give offers to students who are good chemists and who are doing chemistry, maths and something else. Chemistry, maths and history, chemistry, maths and French, whatever it happens to be. We're quite happy to give students with those A-levels offers, but obviously physics, biology and further maths will actually help you, particularly in the first year of the course. If you're doing the IBAC, then the typical offer is 40 points with a 7 in chemistry at higher level and a very strong preference that you're also doing maths at high level, in which case we'll ask for a 6 or a 7 in maths. But if you're doing maths at the standard level, we need you to get a 7, 7 being the maximum score you can get for those of you who are not doing the IBAC. And you also need to be doing another science at the higher level. Just to give you an idea of what our typical entry looks like. Obviously, all of our students have chemistry and maths, grade A or A star at A level or equivalent. But about 40% of them haven't done physics, 60% haven't done biology, and just over half have done further maths. So we don't presume that you've done any of those, and we will teach all the physics and all the biology in the course from scratch. And we will assume that you've done maths A level or equivalent, but we certainly won't assume that you've done the topics that are in further maths. Our actual average intake is about just under 3 A stars, so 2.9 in the last year, which gives you some idea of the calibre of students that we are trying to attract. A common question is, which college should you apply to? Now, there are 28 colleges who accept chemists and 2 who don't. So your first test is to make sure you don't choose one of the 2 that don't. All areas of chemistry are taught in each college. So on an academic point of view, there isn't really any difference between the colleges. You'll get the same course. Of course, the tutorials are different, the tutors are different, but quite frankly, every tutorial I teach is different anyway, even though it's taught by me, but it's taught to different sets of students who need different things from it. So don't worry about the academics. The colleges are all more or less the same in their academic level. And your tutorials will be with your tutor in college or with another specialist. Some colleges have exchange arrangements, so you get some tutorials with people from your college and some with people from another college. Lectures, practicals and exams are all departmental. Everybody gets the same lectures, everybody gets the same practical course, and everybody does the same exams. So from an academic point of view, don't worry about which college. Think about other things. You might ask some difficult questions like, do they provide accommodation for all 4 years? You might be particularly interested in music or politics or something, and you might want to find out from the college whether they are particularly strong in music or politics or whatever it is that you're interested in, or some kind of sport. Rowing, for example, is very popular. Lots of students try rowing out at the beginning of the first year, and some of them obviously are very good. So visit the colleges, try to gauge the atmosphere. I know it's difficult to visit in person this year. Try to gauge the atmosphere of the college by talking to the people there, and try to think about whether this is the sort of place that you'd like to spend 4 years in. Right? There are colleges which were built before Columbus discovered America. There are colleges which were built in the 20th century. Some of them even have central heating. In fact, I think they all do these days. Your college choice shouldn't affect your chances of being offered a place. And we do go to quite a lot of lengths to ensure that that's the case. All colleges have signed up to something called the Common Framework, which is a common set of rules that they all will abide by. We have a process called reallocation. So every year there are some colleges that have too many applicants and some colleges that don't have enough, and we will reallocate randomly some students from the colleges that have too many to the colleges that don't have enough, just to make sure that all colleges basically are interviewing at the same rate of students per place. Try to make the playing field as level as possible. In addition to that, most people who are interviewed will get a second interview at another college. And so you'll be seen by more than one college typically. And of course, we will have a look after the event at whether the two colleges' views of you agree with each other. If you don't want to choose a college, you can make an open application, and then there's an algorithm in the Central University which will assign you a first choice college who would then interview you. And at the end, some of our offers are college offers, but some of our offers are called open offers. These are offers which basically are underwritten by a college, but are there so that we can fill up gaps left by students who don't succeed in making their offers or who pull out for whatever reason. So if you're given an open offer, that means that you're still more likely to go to the college who've made that offer, and they have preference on you if they do get a gap, but you may get transferred to another college who you haven't seen before, simply in order to ensure that that you get the place that you deserve. Everybody who's made an offer and who succeeds in the offer will be given a place somewhere. Finally, if there are any questions, then you can contact me. I'm Nick Green. I'm basically in charge of the course and of the postgraduates in the course. And if you have any questions after all the other things that are going on the open day, so there will be frequently answered questions pages, there will be chat rooms and things like that, then please send me an email and I'll do my best to answer it. So thank you very much for watching, and good luck.